everyone, this is Natalia on Luxury with Natalia, and I'm joined by someone really cool and innovative, all the way in New York, Andjelic. How are you?
Good. Thank you for having me. A little bit jet lagged, but okay.
Yeah, you've just come from an exciting destination, Japan.
Yeah, but you shouldn't say that too, like because of the coronavirus. So we were fine, but at the same time, like Japanese had like 3 masks on. I mean, I did too. So yeah.
Good. Well, I'm
great. Japan is always great.
Yeah, and I'm hoping you're safe and ready to rock this new month coming ahead.
Absolutely.
So tell me a bit more. I mean, you've been named to Forbes CMO Next. That's so exciting, and all these amazing accolades. And also, you're a speaker that you just told me about at Cannes International Festival of Creativity every year. Wow. What's going on in the world of Anna?
What isn't going on? Well, I'm going to Dubai in 2 weeks to speak at Dubai Links, so which is also part of the Canal family. And after that, there is like Naples where I'm speaking, and I think I'm looking forward to May just being, like here to do some work. And I'm doing a lot of writing now, and I just launched the Sociology of Business, a newsletter that is looking at the sociology side of business in a sense, how changes in what consumers value and how are transforming capital, transforming social, cultural, environmental capital, and what forms of new capital are we trading in, and why is that relevant for brands, and what is the role of brands in this new aspiration, a modern aspiration economy, that shapes what we really desire and value, what we spend our time and money on, and how they can successfully position themselves and communicate themselves. And also, what is their broader role in how do you put values and ethics at the center of what they're doing, not just economic capital, but social, environmental, cultural capital. So that is that new newsletter. So I've been writing a lot.
That's good. When you're on the plane, then you have some time to do all that, because I don't know how you do it. You're all over the place.
It's on the plane, but also it was in Tokyo. It was, you just if you have ideas, you just they just hit you anywhere. So yeah, that's that. And then I'm also working with fun brands, and that it's a little bit practitioner and then thinking, and yeah. What about you?
Yeah, same thing, like you, kind of going into new dimensions. And I love how marketing is evolving, especially in the yachting market, because we met a long time ago, it seems, 2016.
It's only 4 years, but it seems like forever, yeah.
Well, yeah, it's called the Make Your Mark conference in London, and you were a speaker, and the theme was basically that luxury brands need to adapt, and first and foremost, yachting companies and brokerages and anyone in the yachting world have to step up their game to come to the same level as the others, let's say. What do you think, and have you seen some good impact from that conference, or have you seen that yacht brokerages are changing their game? What's your feedback?
There are two things. First of all, I think that all change is a matter of marginal gains. You change a little bit, 1%. You change everything by 1%. Once you accumulate all those gains, you can see a bigger change. No one is going to wake up one morning and start doing their business differently, because it's all about the systemic approach. One part of a system can change, but if the rest of the system doesn't change, you're not going to make. So everything needs to kind of happen at the same time. So what I am seeing is more of a conversation for one, and I think more of education and kind of awareness of the right questions to be asking and the right things to be thinking about. And then especially in marketing, sort of more of modernization of marketing rather than brokerages themselves. It's more hey, how do we reach actually the audience we want to reach? And also, how do we think again about how what impact we leave on the world. So like, yes, there is a lot of like maybe greenwashing there, but there's also some like from greenwashing may some good things happen. So I'm seeing those changes right now in more brand communication and marketing rather than maybe how the industry is structured. But I think that as the audience changes and the audience desires change, then the brands will and the entire chain is going to adapt.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think
You're more closer to that industry than I am. So what do you think?
For sure, for sure. Well, there's been since that 2016 some really great changes into the way that marketing is done, and especially
that's for sure.
Yeah. So there's events that are cropping up. They're called like the Super Yacht Experience instead of calling it a Super Yacht Show, an additional.
Exactly. Yeah. Right. Because I remember that at that time I was starting to talk about experience economy and how rich people are spending, how affluent, high net worth individuals spending their time and money on privacy, on experiences, on rare locations, and that just snowballed from there. Basically, that was the beginning of that conversation, and then it just like really spiked, and now it's kind of obvious that every touch point needs to be experienced.
Absolutely. And so would you say that you are disruptive in your ways?
I mean, yes and no, because in order to really be impactful, you can't be too disruptive. So again, that's what like you can't come in and break things. You can come in and maybe inspire people to do things differently. So in that sense, yes, you can have big, bold ideas, but you sort of have to have a lot of operational know-how to implement them. So it's kind of like business at the front, party in the back, like the mullet strategy. So yeah, you have to kind of have like, oh, this makes a lot of sense for business, for the brand, for the audience, and let's do this different. But then again, like, how do you make that operationally possible, organizationally possible, and also inspiring and fun?
Yeah, that's
because if people are scared of change, you're not going to achieve anything. They need to really embrace it. They need to be excited about it, and they need to like run with it themselves. So it's more about like delivering a vision that is very ROI based. It can't just be like blue sky. It needs to be like, oh, but that makes more sense. There is a business case for disruption.
Yeah, cool, of course. And then in terms of, because you're in New York now and here I am in Europe, I think there must be a huge difference in the way that digital marketing is done in the US versus the EU. You know a bit more about that.
Well, I don't know much about EU because I spent my entire professional life here, 20 years now. So what I do know is when I work both on agency side and on a brand side, for example, GDPR was a big thing that we had to deal with when I was the chief brand officer at Rebecca Minkoff with in 2018. So that was a big thing, and I think that maybe that Europeans are more rigorous in terms of their regulations because in the US it's more market driven, and there are less of regulatory, like sort of the grip of the of regulatory is like less, but at the same time I think there are also different formats because the audiences are different. This is a giant market. I mean, this is 300 million people, one market. And in Europe, there is a lot of smaller markets that are separated by languages and by different levels of digital savvy at the end of the day. So it's in that sense, it's very, when you have brands here, those brands have just much bigger canvas. And then the level of maybe technological savvy is more adjusted in a sense. So yeah, and I mean I'm sure you have your local popularity gaps like Pinterest or Twitter, like the different social networks are popular in different markets.
Yeah, for sure. And what about sociology? Because you studied it at a university. Do you think that has a good impact on being who you are today and what you do and bring to your clients?
Oh, I'm sure because I mean I did my master's in media studies. I got my PhD in sociology. It was sociology of innovation, sociology of technology, how organizational sociology, so organizational innovation. So it was all about how innovation spread in society, how to organize for innovation. And there was a lot of things that I studied then, and I actually kept in touch with reading that are still not like a topic of, not a topic of a conversation. Some of those are now, but some of them are just beginning to be. So of course, in that sense, it's a much more nuanced understanding of not just the role of technology in society and how people interact with technology on a granular level, but also like how design shapes our decision making and our behaviors, and how we inscribe values in design, and how those values are then implemented when you think about Facebook and privacy, for example. And then also on the other level, how different values form communities, how people, what are the small groups, bigger groups, how social influence spreads. So there is a lot of that is applicable, that can be applicable. I mean, at the end of the day, what things I studied are all rooted in real life. So it's just how you translate those two worlds and where you find yourself at the intersection that I find the most fun, I think. Yeah.
So would you say experience has a huge impact? Like for any, if you wanted to give advice to somebody starting out there and wanting to do their marketing like they should, what is the one thing that they should think about when they go for their campaigns and their strategies?
Oh,
there's so many, I know, but if you
there is, but I would say always look at people's behavior, at what people are influenced by, how they make decisions, how they think about things, like how they're, I mean, what are their basically sources of influence and how are they influenced? They always belong to groups, they always belong to different taste communities. And thanks to the internet now, successful products are much more, trends are much more susceptible to social influence, that they're not about individual preferences. You never make decision in isolation. You go online, you go on your phone, and what you see really influences you. So I suggest don't think about think about behavior, but don't think about behavior of individuals. Think about behavior of taste communities, of groups, and how they interact and how that forms what you're influenced by. And we belong to many taste communities at the same time. We're influenced by many different things.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned influence. I like that word. Going on to the next topic is the influencers out there. So there are so many of them. What, I mean, when it started out, it was sort of like, wow, okay, there's only a couple there. So you did everything to impress them, get them on board, do whatever they had to do, talk about your brand. But now, what is an influencer for?
Well, I prefer thinking about, again, the networks of influence and communities of influence, because we are influenced by many different people for different things. And we're influenced by our friends, we're influenced by like people we work with in the office, people we see on the street. It depends on what. You're not going to go to Kim Kardashian for a book recommendation, you know? So it's sort of like different thing. It's much more multi-layered. And you can be influenced by someone who has 3 followers. It's about the topic, it's about the mood, it's about what are you susceptible to at that right time. We're influenced by our friends. We watch same things that our friends are watching because we want to share the same experience with them, not because we particularly like something, maybe. So that also is a scenario. So I would say I always look how belonging to different communities influences us, and that is more than one particular influencer. So it's all about the network of influence and how that cascades. I would say about that, yeah.
Yeah, because at the moment down here in the south of France, it's sort of like bombarded onto loads of influencers saying that they are influencers, but then you question, well, you know, with the algorithm that just changed as well, they had loads and loads of followers, but now it's so hard, much harder.
That's reach. They have big reach, but not necessarily influence. As I said, like, how do you really go from point A for point B? Because like what we are influenced comes from many different angle. So that's, again, I'm going back. You should look as a network, as a system, and seeing how am I going to target this person on their entire experience journey and make sure that they have the right information and the right nudges, not just like pay one influencer and then reach. At the same time, reach works. You really do need to know, on the other hand, what are you using for? Because if you want to reach an awareness, sure, go wide, but that's not going to be very precise targeting. Then if you want to go layer lower, then you're going to find someone who is really targeted, knowledgeable about specific topic. It's like very plugged in, which is more that micro influence. But then you also have algorithmic personalization. So on TikTok, we're influenced by content that has no influencers behind them. It's more about the number of likes. So I think we should recognize those 3 layers of influence.
And again, like Instagram will be changing. We won't see the likes anymore. Maybe that's good. Maybe that's bad.
It's already changed. You should download the new. If you don't want to see likes, download the new version.
Perfect. Oh, it's already out. Oh my God.
It's already out. You can't see anymore. Yeah.
Goodness. Okay, I'll think about that one.
That's one, because it's a big step. It's good. It's good for us. It's good for our brain.
Well, yeah, I watched this movie. I can't remember. There was a series on Netflix, and it was talking about the social media influence and how you could rise in your social status, if you had certain amount of likes per photo. So people were obsessing to the point of killing each other. I mean, it's just really random, but that is what social media is kind of getting us there. We're obsessing about how many likes do we have, how many followers. Who cares? Who cares? Put nice content out there,
That's the social capital, and then you turn your social capital into economic capital, and then you have a completely new market, a new dynamic. So what I mean, likes are going to bring you super yacht deals. So it's not who cares. It's like,
well, not for me. I'm not a broker. Thank you, but I'll just do the fluffy stuff. But that's cool. And then I wanted to ask, okay, so I saw you had an amazing t-shirt on that photo shoot, and that I used on the cover. It said stereotype. So I made an effort to put this t-shirt on, expectations versus reality.
Right.
I'd love your comment.
I noticed that, and I was like, that's really, I was wondering, like, why do you chose like a cat? Why is that reality? Is it something that's like really mellow and like house cat versus someone who is very wild? So it's like part wild, part domesticated. That's what's going through my head when I was. So I was like, I was thinking, like, I like it, and it's definitely memorable, but I was more, my went was like, oh, is this something that's like part wild, part not? I don't know why I went there.
I like that definition. Yeah. Well, but mostly I was thinking, how with expectations from clients, how they have this thing.
The bold, I know. The like the dangerous, the bold, and then it's kind of like, like just, that's good. Maybe I would switch it. I don't know.
Move it around.
I do first, and then, because when you start, you go in like really like strong, and they're like, yeah, and then they're like, well, I don't want to get fired. My Excel spreadsheet is saying that, like, yeah, blah. So, like, that's like, first everyone is excited, and then the reality kicks in.
Yeah, true. Okay, I'll mention it to the designer. Swap it around. Wrong.
Because this means you come in and, it's very mellow and nice, but then it's like, roar,
Roar.
I wish it was like that. Anyway.
Good. And then what about luxury? What is your definition of luxury? Having worked with so many luxury brands around the world, and really big ones like Sotheby's, Moët Hennessy, Belvedere, etc., etc. What is your definition now?
Well, I mean, I like how I'm thinking now, how I'm defining now, I think more about in terms of the modern aspiration economy, because the luxury is reflection of the aspiration, and what was aspiration in the past is not the same what aspiration today. And what is aspiration today is more that like cultural capital, knowledge, information, environmental capital. Are you recycling? Are you what do you know where your food came from? Who made your clothes? And that sort of, so what kind of social capital you are? Are you doing good in your community and so on? So that is for me luxury is tied to that. And when you think about it, there are two luxuries. The last decade was decade of two luxuries. One is this like big luxury, which is like big media or big pharma. It's very commercial, and it's more about the streetwear collaboration and drops and like opening more stores and more China, more, you know. And on the other side, there is that exceptional work of human hands, those intent, the human creativity, the imagination, those maybe cottage industries, you know, that are like Hermes, for example, that like last for a really long time, that are very carefully crafted. And then you see more and more, even among startups who are making like, handmade knives, or you go to Japan and everything is like very small, very considered, very focused on one thing, very handmade. I got some glasses that they want to see. They're handmade, and there is there is a special pride in that. You know, they're really nice, right? They're quite nice, but the guy has like this hole in the wall shop, and he made everything is handmade. He was like, "Hey, look, I made it out. You know, like it's made out of this, and it's really great quality, and it's really great design, and it's very unique. No one else can have it because he can make only some, you know, like one in that color." So I think that is that's the modern aspiration. When you want to have something like, that comes with a story, you don't want to say, "Oh, I got those Gucci glasses. Everyone can have them."
Right. Yeah.
So yes, I think that would be like in terms of when you think about modern aspiration, it's more about like what people aspire to, what high net worth individuals aspire to.
And what do you think is going to happen in the next few years? Are we going to see dramatic changes, or is it still organic, slowly going back to basics, maybe?
Or right, I don't know. I don't make predictions. I just, you know, like I don't want this video to surface in 5 years saying something really dumb. So
Today, for the day, carpe diem. Let's see what happens. What it is.
I think let's do that, and I think that we are going, like, if anything, we are going to see that more of that modern aspiration, and you see like how tourism depends on this modern aspiration, like how modern aspiration depends on tourism, and how like outbreaks like coronavirus really impacts economies of countries that are depending on it. Like when you have, even in terms of traditional luxury, what's happening in China, but also in terms of tourism of Chinese people who are not leaving now, going to Japan to shop, or in other countries. So those other countries are suffering because the economy depends so much on that cultural tourism, on shopping, on like all of that. So I think that's that new modern aspiration economy is shaping up more. So yeah, I don't think I'm going to like go wrong with that one.
Yeah, sure. And thank goodness we have Skype and the internet technology for certain things like this. We can communicate, even if it is going to restrict our travels a little bit. But hopefully I'll see you in Cannes.
Absolutely, I would love that. Let's definitely stay in touch. Yes. Are we still recording, or you're going to cut this part?
Just going to finish up. So wanted to say a big thank you for your time on the show, Luxury with Natalia. And can't wait to see you live so we can do a live one talking about Cannes Lions and what's going on, right?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.